Shabbat Shalom and Mazal Tov. I'd like to pick up where our Shinshinit Neta left off, calling attention to this very fraught time on the Jewish calendar. This Shabbat is called Shabbat Tekuma, nestled between Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, and Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. We have this Shabbat of revival, Shabbat of renewal, Shabbat for getting up, Shabbat for rising to the occasion. It is an emotional roller coaster of history compacted into just a few days. We go down into the depths of dark memories, walking through the long shadows of the Shoah. We mourn for the fallen soldiers of Israel on Yom HaZikaron. We mourn for the Israeli victims of terror. May their memories be for a blessing. And now we can add to the list how we lament the anti-Semitism that has been unleashed on diaspora Jewry since October 7th. And then we say to one another and we say to ourselves, Kumu, it's time to get up. We get up and we emphatically and defiantly, together with the survivors of the Nova Festival, we say we will dance again. Just as King David in our Haftarah said, I will dance before the eternal God. Jewish history is filled with temporary moments. The sands shifting under our feet in unpredictable ways, and yet there is an eternal God, constant, true, everlasting. And that's what I want to call attention to on this Shabbat Tekuma, this tension between precariousness and permanence, between concern and confidence. On this Shabbat Tekuma, we are honest that life in the diaspora can be precarious. We are honest in saying, yes, life in the state of Israel can also be precarious. And there is also a permanence. There is an eternal bond between all Jewish people everywhere. There is an eternal bond between us and the land of Israel. And there is the eternal God who rules over us all. I'll give two examples from this moment on the calendar to prove the point. This month marks the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Buchenwald concentration camp. My grandfather, Alav Hashalom, Rabbi Ernst Lorge, was there. Dressed in the chaplain's uniform of the U.S. Armed Forces, he returned to his home country of Germany, where he was born and raised. And in April 1945, he was an eyewitness to his greatest fears when his unit entered Buchenwald. American CBS journalist Edward Murrow was with my grandfather on that day of liberation, and he ended his report with a plea. I pray you will believe what I have said about what I have seen in Buchenwald. I have reported what I saw and what I heard, but only part of it. For most of it, I have no words. This 80th anniversary, we are still dumbstruck. And on this very day, April 26th, 1948, it was a pivotal day on the Jewish calendar. It was a critical day in the yet-to-be-born Israel's history. This day is little celebrated and hardly remembered, but this day tells a story of courage and defiance and unity. On this day, April 26th, the Irgun and the Haganah signed a cooperation agreement. Without this newly united and well-coordinated army, the Jewish state would likely have never been declared, never successfully defended. Against all odds, Israel became a reality because of this unity and this shared mission. So we dream of permanence. We have hope in a kind of rootedness that did not begin with Theodor Herzl. It's much older than that. Our Haftarah describes it, and that's where I would like to go with you next. Around the year 1000 before the Common Era, there was a radical shift in Jewish history. 3 millennia ago, the nomadic ideals of our people gave way to a new definition of peoplehood and rootedness. It was a shift from portability to permanence, from possibility and dreaming to rootedness. Remember how throughout our desert wanderings we carried a portable sanctuary. First, the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting, then the Mishkan, the tabernacle, with its copper pegs and dolphin skins and curtains embroidered with linen and posts of acacia wood. It could be dismantled and reassembled, carried on the shoulders of the Levites from place to place throughout our wilderness wanderings. Our sanctuaries were portable then, as we were wandering Jews. But all that changed with King David. All that changed with what we read about in this Shabbat's Haftarah. We put our confidence in our place in the land, and our confidence grew. It gave rise to aspirations of permanence, aspirations of rootedness. King David dreamed of a house of worship that would stand tall forever, would not only call attention to the eternal God of Israel, but would also unify and centralize the tribes of Israel. It's a dramatic shift. The first step in the direction of permanence in the land was to bring the Aron HaKodesh, the rule of law contained in the Holy Ark, to Jerusalem. It was the practice until then that the Ark would circulate, would rotate from tribe to tribe, region to region. This system ritualized the beliefs that God's presence can be known anywhere and everywhere, that every tribe has equal access to God, and that God is beyond boundaries and borders. Also, very true and very important teaching through that symbol of a wandering ark. But King David envisioned a capital city of Jerusalem where the ark would come to rest and be housed permanently, and instead everyone would make pilgrimage to it. God was reluctant about this plan. God was reluctant about the prospect of a permanent temple in Jerusalem. Why would that have been? Weren't David's intentions pure? If he, as a king of flesh and blood, is glorified by a beautiful palace, shouldn't there be a palace built to praise the eternal God, the Melech Malchei Hamlachim, the ruler above all human rulers, the King of kings? Why should the Ark of the Covenant have to roam from place to place like a homeless soul? Why shouldn't it sit at the center of a stable and secure temple to which all the Israelites would make pilgrimage? Our Haftarah says that God came to Nathan the prophet and instructed him, "Go and tell my servant David, thus says the eternal God, are you the one to build a house for me to dwell in? From the day I brought the people of Israel out from Egypt to this very day, I have not dwelt in a house, but I have moved about in a tent or tabernacle." In other words, God is saying to David, only I am permanent. Only I establish permanence. You, David, are human. Even with all your best of intentions, you are incapable of establishing a forever kind of reality. Certainly not by building a building of stone, no matter how grand. Physical structures are by definition temporary, while I, Adonai Tzvaot says, I am the very definition of everlasting. From this we learn that God does not need a temple, God does not need a country, God does not need borders or boundaries. God is above it all. But we do need these things. We do need sanctuaries to gather and to celebrate, like on days like this, to study Torah, to pray, to raise our voices as one. And we do need countries. The God of all time and space does not need a house or a home, but we do. A country, a temple, these are powerful tools for uniting us, for strengthening humanity, but be clear that it is only for us. And let's be aware that building any kind of construction, whether it be a country or a temple, any kind of edifice, comes with a risk. God warns us time and again that things of space can easily be turned into idols. A plank of wood can be treated as a sacred post. A temple can become a shrine. God brought the Tower of Babel down to rubble to teach this very lesson. Avraham Avinu smashed the idols to teach this lesson. God brought us out of Egypt, away from the pyramids and temples, its statues and stones, out into the open spaces to teach us this very lesson. But it seems we cannot help ourselves. We need something to touch. We need a flag to wave. We need a vote to cast. We need a sacred space in which we can take sanctuary from the world outside. This seems to be a human need that we just can't shake. And so God concedes. Out of God's love and compassion for us, God says, I will meet you halfway. Yes, you can build yourself a temple. And yes, you can build yourself a state. But it comes with a warning and an invitation. God says to King David, I will establish a home for my people Israel, and I will plant them firmly, so that they shall dwell secure and shall tremble no more. Evildoers shall not oppress them anymore as in the past. The eternal God declares to you that Adonai will establish a house for you. When your days are done and you lie with your ancestors, I will raise you up, and I will raise up your offspring, the next generation after you. There will be another to build a house for my name, and I will establish his royal throne forever. God says, you do not build a home for me, I build a home for you. While our time on earth and our efforts in this life are fleeting, God's very name means eternity. Permanence is God's domain. And yet, we are duty-bound to make the strongest constructions in the here and now as best we know how. One day, there is a shift from dreams of permanence to actions that will bring a temporary permanence against the backdrop of God's eternity. And how do we do that? In many ways, building up this good country of Canada where we live, building up the state of Israel, may it be blessed. We do this through casting our votes, and I hope everyone has made plans and arrangements to cast your vote here in the Canadian election. That is not the only vote that we can cast now. As Jews, we are also invited to participate in another kind of sacred construction, and that is the World Zionist Congress, with all of its complexities. Yes, we are invited to vote twice, once for our country and once for our homeland in Israel. Our home here in Canada, our homeland in Israel. So I'm just going to say a few words about this. You're going to be hearing much more about it in the days and weeks to come. The World Zionist Congress is a very rare and precious design created by none other than Theodor Herzl in 1897. It is an invitation for diaspora Jewry to take part in the building up of the State of Israel in a very tangible and concrete way. In fact, the World Zionist Congress is responsible for allocating more than $1 billion a year. And so your votes have a significant influence on how the State of Israel and diaspora communities will take shape. Your vote decides to whom these more than $1 billion can be entrusted towards. There will be an election in the coming days. First, I'm going to tell you who is eligible. If you are 18 years or older, you are eligible. If you self-identify as a Jew, and if you live in Canada as a citizen or a permanent resident, and if you did not vote in last year's Israeli election. So if you are a citizen of Israel who participated in the Israeli election last year, then you are not eligible. But most of us in this room, most of your Jewish Canadian friends and family are eligible to cast a vote, and it's very important that you do. You do not need to be affiliated with a synagogue to vote in the World Zionist Congress. You do not have to identify yourself as a Reform Jew to vote for the Reform slate. But I encourage everyone to consider casting your vote for the Reform slate. When can you do this? There is a voter registration period that opens early in May, right around the corner, and then there is a voting period that begins in early June and closes June 15th. So it's a very short window that this very important process, occupies. So let me say a word about why. If you want to support Reform congregations in Israel, more than 50 of them, to make sure that they are represented in Israel's national life, that they are respected in Israel's religious life, then you want to cast a vote for Reform. If you want to protect Israeli democracy, if you want to show your support and stand in solidarity with the thousands of Israelis who have been taking to the streets week after week for more than 2 years now to call for a healthy democracy in Israel, then you should vote for Reform. There will be a commitment by that leadership to ensure democracy in Israel, religious pluralism in Israel, and equality for all of Israel's citizens. And what happens if you don't vote? I don't like negative campaigning, but it's important for you to have your eyes open. I hate to say it, it pains me to say it actually. If you don't vote, you are actively forfeiting your vote to ultra-Orthodox rabbis and extremist politicians who do not share many of our values. So if you care about women's rights, vote Reform. If you care about LGBTQ rights, vote Reform. If you care about the rights of Arab Israeli citizens and other minorities living in Israel, vote Reform. If you want Israel to continue to recognize the conversions that take place among diaspora Jewry, vote Reform. If you want Israel to recognize non-Orthodox rabbis like me, both in Israel and in the diaspora, vote Reform. And if you want to support the people and organizations who are working tirelessly to secure Israel's democracy and to work for a peaceful future for Israel and her neighbors, vote Reform. So keep your eyes open in the coming days for the details that we will send you. Please consider yourselves ambassadors to share this information with your circles of friends and family. This is very important. In conclusion, these days between Yom HaShoah and Yom HaZikaron remind us that we need to live a Judaism rooted in the here and now. And sometimes it does take the very practical work like sowing a field or casting a vote. And at the same time, we must never lose sight of the ruler on high. Just moments ago, when we went to take the Torah from the Aron HaKodesh, we sang, Malchutecha, Malchut Kol Olamim, Umemshaltecha Bechol Dor Vador. Your dominion, O God, is an eternal dominion, an everlasting rulership. Your governance endures throughout the generations, the Dor Vador. Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. God is the sovereign above all, and God rules past, present, and future.